The judge pushed back his chair so suddenly that the whole courtroom went silent. His face was red with anger, and his hands were shaking. He stood up, looked directly at me, and said, "I refuse to be part of this corruption any longer." Then he pointed at my lawyer, the man I trusted with my life, and said, "Tell her the truth." In that moment, I felt the floor disappear beneath me. I wasn't just fighting for my freedom anymore. I had just learned I was fighting against the very person who was supposed to save me. Make sure you subscribe right now and comment below where you're watching from, because what I'm about to reveal is the truth that was never meant to be heard. My name is Liana Rivers, and just a few months ago, I was living an ordinary life. I was a second-grade teacher, the kind who stayed after school to help students who fell behind and who spent my weekends making decorations for the classroom. My life was quiet, predictable, and filled with purpose. I had never missed a bill, never been in trouble with the law, and had never even been pulled over for speeding. I believed that if you live with honesty and kindness, the world will treat you fairly in return. I no longer believe that. Everything changed on what I thought would be a normal Tuesday morning. I was getting ready for work when police cars pulled into my driveway. At first, I thought they were responding to a call in the neighborhood, but then they walked toward my door with handcuffs in their hands. They told me I was under arrest for embezzling over $100,000 from the school charity fund. I remember laughing in shock, thinking this had to be some mistake. I had never even had access to those funds. But the look in their eyes told me this wasn't a misunderstanding. Someone had planted evidence against me. I will never forget the look on my mother's face as I was taken away in handcuffs. She ran toward me, begging the officers to stop, screaming that her daughter would never steal. My younger brother Noah stood frozen on the porch, shaking his head, unable to speak. But my father did not rush toward me. He stood still. His eyes were not shocked. They were scared, yes, but not surprised. In that moment, I felt something inside me shift. I didn't know it then, but my arrest was not the beginning of my story. It was the moment my past, my future, and my family's deepest secret collided. At the police station, I remained calm because I believed the truth would protect me. They allowed me to make a phone call, and I called my lawyer, Richard Howell. He had represented a friend of my mother in a case and had a reputation for being sharp, persuasive, and ruthless in court when needed. He arrived quickly, shook my hand, and smiled in a way that made me feel safe. He told me not to worry. They have no real evidence, and I won't let them ruin your life, he said. I believed him. Over the next few weeks, things became worse. Evidence appeared out of nowhere, bank statements with my name on them, emails I never wrote, signatures I never signed. Every day I woke up in disbelief. Every night I went to sleep telling myself that the truth would come out. My mother visited me constantly and prayed for a miracle. My brother begged me not to lose hope. But my father, he avoided eye contact with me. When I asked him if he believed I was innocent, he said quietly, "The truth is not always as simple as we want it to be." Those words haunted me. As the court hearing approached, I tried to ignore my fear. My lawyer assured me that everything would be fine. "The judge is strict but fair," he said. "He won't let anything unjust happen to you." I didn't know it at the time, but that single sentence was the biggest lie I had ever been told. And I was about to discover that the person I trusted most in that courtroom was the one who had led me into it. The courtroom felt like a place where truth would finally rise. But as soon as I walked through those double doors, I felt the air change. It was as if everyone but me already knew the outcome. I took my seat beside my attorney, Richard Howell, who leaned over and whispered, "Stay calm and let me handle everything." His tone was smooth, confident, too practiced, like someone delivering a line rather than speaking truth. Across the room, I saw the prosecutor glance briefly at my lawyer with a look I couldn't read. Not aggression, not rivalry, recognition. My heart skipped. Behind me, my mother clutched my brother's hand so tightly his knuckles had turned white. My father sat at the end of the bench, his head down, his eyes fixed on the floor, shoulders tense, as if he was bracing for impact. The clerk called the court to order, and the judge entered. Judge Harold Whitman was known for his integrity. He had a reputation for being fair and fearless in the face of corruption. I took a deep breath, hoping that in his courtroom truth would win. But instead of beginning the trial, the judge remained standing, his eyes not on the court, but directly on me. His posture was rigid, his expression unlike anything I had ever seen on a judge's face. Regret. He looked at me as if I were a victim, not a defendant. Then he shifted his gaze to my attorney. The muscles in his jaw tightened. "Mr. Howell," the judge said slowly, "are you prepared to proceed?" My lawyer answered confidently, "Yes, Your Honor. We are ready to clear my client's name." It was a strong line, delivered with theatrical certainty, but the judge didn't move. He didn't sit. Instead, he said, "Before we begin, I want to be very clear. I will not participate in a trial that has been compromised." My breath caught in my throat. A ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom. My lawyer stiffened beside me, his hand tightening on his briefcase. Richard leaned forward and said, "Your Honor, I don't understand what you're insinuating." But the judge ignored him. "Ms. Rivers," he said, turning to me, his voice softer now, "I need you to listen very carefully." My heart pounded in my chest. My palms were sweating. The entire courtroom was still, as if the building itself was holding its breath. Then the judge stepped back from the bench, removed his robe, and placed it gently over his chair. That gesture alone sent shock through the air. Judges don't remove their robe in session, unless they are refusing to preside. He looked directly at Richard and said, "I cannot in good conscience continue, knowing that the very person charged with protecting this defendant is acting in coordination against her." Gasps echoed around the courtroom. I felt like the ground had opened beneath me. I turned to look at my lawyer, but his expression remained disturbingly calm, almost emotionless. It was the first time I saw the mask drop. He didn't deny it. He didn't even look surprised. My mother stood up behind me, her voice breaking. "What is happening? What does that mean?" The judge raised a hand for silence. His voice firm, he said, "This trial is not about justice. It is an orchestrated event designed to convict an innocent person to protect the guilty." I felt my entire body go cold. My vision blurred around the edges. It was like every horror I had imagined but refused to accept was suddenly laid bare in front of me. My attorney, the man who told me not to worry, who promised to save me, was actually working with the people trying to destroy me. I turned to him, my voice barely a whisper. "Why?" He looked at me with eyes that were no longer warm or reassuring. They were empty, a predator's eyes. "It's nothing personal," he said quietly, as if that made it better. Rage and disbelief surged inside me. I tried to stand, but my knees buckled. My father stood before I could speak. His voice was sharp, desperate. "Judge Whitman, please do not reveal anything else in open court. It's not safe for her." I looked at my father, confused and terrified. He knew something I didn't. The judge nodded solemnly. "I know the pressure your family has been under to remain silent, but I will not continue to be part of this." He looked at me again, and his next words shattered the last piece of my reality. "Ms. Rivers, your lawyer is not defending you. He is delivering you." At that moment, I realized I wasn't just fighting a legal case. I was fighting for my life against a system that was never meant to let me win. And the worst part, I had trusted the enemy. The courtroom erupted in chaos the second those words left the judge's mouth. People stood up. Reporters whispered frantically. My mother started crying openly, and my brother looked around in confusion, like he had just realized we were in danger, even though we were surrounded by law. I sat there frozen, my heartbeat pounding so violently I could hear it echo inside my ears. My lawyer, no, the man pretending to be my lawyer, did not react with outrage or shock. He simply closed his briefcase with unsettling calm, like his role in this performance had ended. I looked at him, my voice trembling, and asked, "What did you do? Why are you doing this to me?" He leaned in slightly and said under his breath, "I told you from the beginning to trust me. You just misunderstood what that meant." Those words felt like a knife twisting into my chest. Judge Whitman raised his voice to silence the courtroom and declared, "Effective immediately. I am recusing myself. I will be submitting evidence to federal authorities. This case is now under emergency review. Before anyone could respond, 2 federal marshals in the room stepped forward and approached my lawyer. For the first time since I had met him, I saw something in his eyes. Panic. Quick, sharp panic. Not because he was exposed, but because this wasn't how things were supposed to go. He tried to leave the courtroom, but one of the marshals blocked him. That was when everything clicked into place. He wasn't expecting the judge to turn against him. He thought the judge was part of it. He thought everyone was controlled. But someone broke the chain. Judge Whitman had risked his career, and maybe his life, to expose the truth. Before I could process it, my father stood up and shouted, "Stop everything. If what you're about to reveal isn't handled correctly, you'll put all of us in danger." My head snapped toward him. All my life I had wondered why my father, a man who once stood proudly for justice, had lost his job and never fought to prove his innocence. Now I knew. He wasn't silent because he was guilty. He was silent because speaking meant putting his family on the line. The judge nodded slightly, acknowledging my father's warning, and said, "Then it's time she knows what she's truly involved in." At that moment, my entire world, my career, my future, everything I thought I knew, shifted. This wasn't just about me being framed. It was connected to something far bigger, and my family was at the heart of it. The judge asked the marshals to escort my supposed lawyer into protective custody rather than arrest, saying, "He will talk when he realizes he's safer with us than with the people who sent him." People who sent him. That phrase hit me hard. This went beyond legal betrayal. This was a coordinated attack. My attorney didn't just betray me. He was placed in my life, assigned to me. The moment that truth sank in, the fear I felt transformed into something else. Not rage, not despair, focus, determination. I stood up and addressed the court, my voice shaking but clear. If there are people trying to silence me, then I want to speak now. I want the truth out in the open. Judge Whitman held up a hand and said, "Not here, not yet. They are watching everything." I asked him, "Who is watching?" He looked at me with a sorrowful expression that sent a chill through my entire body. "The same people who destroyed your father's life, and they are not done." He then looked at the bailiff and said, "Clear the courtroom immediately and seal the doors. No one leaves, and no one communicates with the outside without clearance." Panic broke out. My mother grabbed my shoulders, asking what this meant. My father stepped between us, his voice low. "It means everything I've tried to protect you from is finally here." As the room emptied, I made eye contact with Noah. For the first time, he looked scared, not for me, but of what would happen next. That was the moment I made my decision. I was no longer going to be the girl who trusted the wrong people and hoped someone else would save me. I saw the truth clearly. This wasn't a court case. This was a war for control, and I had just been pulled from the position of a pawn into the position of the one thing they feared most, the one who knew. The courtroom had been cleared, sealed, and placed under federal lockdown. I sat in silence at the defense table, no longer beside my attorney, because the man I thought was my attorney had just been escorted out in handcuffs, his face pale with the realization that his plan had failed. My heart was hammering in my chest, but this time it wasn't just fear. It was the unstoppable force of truth trying to break free. Judge Whitman stood without his robe, no longer acting under the title of Your Honor, but as a man who had chosen morality over position. He approached my family and me directly. "This was never a legal case," he said, his voice steady and low. "This was an extraction. They were preparing to use this courtroom to officially indict you, so the evidence would become sealed and inaccessible forever. They wanted you convicted, because once the system had you, you could never speak publicly." I looked at him in disbelief. "Indict me for what? Why me?" Judge Whitman glanced at my father. My father nodded, signaling that it was time to reveal the secret he had carried for years. My father took a deep breath and said, "Because you are the only person who can expose what they have hidden, and they have spent years preparing to silence you before you ever knew it existed." My head spun. What have they hidden? What does this have to do with me? My father stepped closer. 13 years ago, I uncovered illegal financial channels connecting government officials, private corporations, and education funds. They weren't just stealing money. They were laundering it through schools, through programs, using identities of staff members without their knowledge. You were one of those identities. My blood ran cold. He continued, "They used your name when you were in high school. You didn't know it, but a bank account was opened in your name at 16. They siphoned money through it, leaving a trail that would eventually lead to you. You were always the end game." My throat tightened. Everything made sense in a horrifying flash. The mysterious bank statements, the forged signatures, the manufactured evidence. They didn't frame me overnight. They had been building this trap for years. My father struggled to continue. When I found out, I tried to expose it. That is why I lost my job. They threatened to hurt you if I spoke another word. I thought I had time. I thought I could protect you from the outside, but they moved faster than I anticipated. I stared at him, a mix of sorrow and shock washing over me. "Why didn't you tell me?" He closed his eyes. "Because the moment you knew, they would know you knew, and then you would become a threat, not just a target." Judge Whitman turned to me and said, "Mr. Rivers was not the only one who tried to expose this. There were others. They were all shut down, discredited, or killed in accidents. But your identity, your file, it contains the final link. It connects all accounts. If you speak, if you testify with evidence, it will all collapse." The room felt suddenly weightless. I wasn't facing charges. I was carrying the key to one of the largest corruption operations in the country. At that exact moment, the sealed courtroom doors burst open and federal agents in tactical gear entered. Everyone froze. For a second, I thought they were there to arrest me. But their leader approached Judge Whitman and said, "We have secured the perimeter. The individuals who attempted to intercept this proceeding have been detained. It's time." "Time for what?" I asked, my voice trembling. The agent turned to me. "To make a choice. You can walk away today, change your name, disappear, and live under protection, hoping they never find you. Or," he paused, locking eyes with me, "you can stand up, take the evidence your father preserved, and testify before the special federal tribunal. Doing so will expose every name involved. It will end this. But once you speak, there is no going back. You will be the most protected and most hunted person in the country." In that moment, everything became clear. My whole life had been shaped by forces I didn't know existed. I had been treated like a pawn because I had been taught to see myself as powerless. But I wasn't powerless. I was the last unopened door. The one thing they never expected would stand against them. I stood up slowly. My legs were shaking, but my voice was strong when I spoke. "I'm done running. I'm done being silent. I will testify. I will expose them all." The judge nodded, a look of profound relief crossing his face. My father put his hand on my shoulder, not as a protector this time, but as someone finally standing beside me. My mother cried silently, not in fear, but in pride. The courtroom lights flickered as agents began securing the exit. I took a deep breath and walked forward. I entered that courtroom as a defendant. I was leaving it as the weapon they never saw coming. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to fight. The moment I stood up from that courtroom table, I knew the life I once had was over. Not because I lost it, but because I had outgrown it. Federal agents escorted me through a private exit reserved for protected witnesses. And as the cool air hit my face, I felt the weight of the truth settle into my bones. I wasn't a victim anymore. I wasn't a defendant, a suspect, or a frightened teacher begging for someone to believe me. I was now holding the one thing they feared most: evidence, real names, real accounts, real transactions that connected judges, business leaders, politicians, and even people I once trusted in my own community. As I stepped into the armored vehicle, I looked back through the tinted glass and saw my parents standing together. My father had one arm around my mother, his face tense but brave. My mother clutched my brother's shoulder, tears glistening in her eyes, not from fear, but from pride. For the first time, I saw my family not as broken by secrets, but as united by truth. A truth that was about to shatter everything beyond our front door. Inside the vehicle, an agent placed a folder in my lap. On the front was my name. Inside were documents that confirmed everything my father had said. Bank statements linked to my stolen identity, wire transfers, private meeting logs, offshore accounts. The top page read, "Final evidentiary file, to be presented in tribunal under federal seal." My hands shook as I touched the paper, not because I was afraid, but because I understood the responsibility now resting in them. People had died for this information. People had been ruined, silenced, erased. And now it was in the hands of a 27-year-old woman they had once believed would quietly accept a guilty verdict. The next days went by in a blur of security briefings, encrypted messages, and relocation plans. I was placed in a safe house, not because I was hiding, but because I was preparing. Every night before I slept, I thought of the students in my classroom, their faces full of innocence and trust. I thought about the charity fund that was meant to provide food, clothes, and school supplies for children in need. Money that had been stolen, not by me, but by powerful individuals who profited off the suffering of others. That was when I realized that this was no longer about clearing my name. This was about giving those children back their future. One night, as I reviewed documents under the supervision of federal lawyers, I came across a sealed transcript from years earlier, written by my father. In it, he stated that he knew if he came forward, it would put his daughter's life in danger. He had written, "If she ever discovers the truth and chooses to speak, know that she is stronger than all of us who stayed silent." I closed the file and put my hand over my heart. My father had believed in me, even when I didn't know who I truly was. And now, I had a choice: to carry his unfinished fight to the end, or to live quietly in protection, allowing corruption to continue. When the day of the tribunal came, I walked into the chamber not as the accused, but as the lead witness. Cameras were not allowed, phones were confiscated, armed security stood by every door. The room was filled with people who once held unimaginable power, now stripped of titles, forced to sit in silence as evidence was read aloud. When they announced my name and I took the witness stand, I looked directly at the defendants, not with hatred, but with conviction, because this wasn't revenge. This was justice. My voice did not shake when I took the oath. My heart did not race. I spoke every word with clarity. I named every person involved. I showed every document. I revealed every transaction. I exposed the system they thought would protect them. And in that moment, I understood why they feared me, not because I was dangerous, but because I was no longer afraid. When I left the chamber, the sun was rising. A new day, a new life, not a peaceful one, but a meaningful one. The fight wasn't over. There were still appeals, trials, and threats ahead, but I was not the same woman who once believed the law would save me. I was the woman who learned that sometimes the only way to save the system is to break the silence that protects it. My story didn't end in that courtroom. It began there. And if you believe in standing for truth, if you believe every voice matters, then make sure you subscribe right now and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because the next chapter is already unfolding, and I want you to be part of it.